And the term hobbyist takes on sometimes a negative connotation. But jiu-jitsu is not a hobby like collecting stamps. Because when you have someone who they work all day to then decide to go to a sweaty, stinky jiu-jitsu gym and risk injury, to refer to this as a hobby, it seems like it misses the mark. Welcome to the alchemy of struggle, baby. So there's an interesting debate in jiu-jitsu, and it's something I've thought about a lot. No, it's not the strength debate. I think we squashed that one. People will disagree, but whatever. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out on the channel. It's called Time to Stop Pretending Strength Does Not Matter in Jiu-Jitsu. Giving my thoughts on this whole you shouldn't use strength in jiu-jitsu argument, which I think is just silly. But there's another debate in jiu-jitsu. There is a false dichotomy, a false choice. For those of you who aren't familiar with this terminology, this is when someone gives you a choice between two things. You can only choose one of those things, nothing outside of those things, nothing in between. You only have two choices. This is called a false choice or a false dichotomy. Why is it false? Because there exists other choices beyond the two that have been presented. For example, someone says, you either agree with me and support me, or you agree with my enemies and support them. It's like, no, this is a false choice. How about I don't agree with either of you? I choose a different path. So what is this false dichotomy in jiu-jitsu? Are you a jiu-jitsu competitor or a jiu-jitsu hobbyist? And the term hobbyist takes on sometimes a negative connotation. And for a while, I wasn't really sure why. And so I've thought about this over the years, and I've listened to the different arguments multiple times. Everyone wants to say that they're a competitor, but do you compete like Gordon Ryan or the Rotolo brothers or the members of B Team? Probably not. The average jiu-jitsu athlete does not compete like that. So then that makes you a hobbyist. But jiu-jitsu is not a hobby like collecting stamps. To compare jiu-jitsu to a hobby like collecting stamps or any hobby that you can think of seems wrong. Because when you have someone who they work all day, they either, work outside, they do construction or cop, or they work in an office. When we finish working at the end of the day, most of us, we're tired and all we want to do is go home, have some dinner and chill. To then instead decide to go to a sweaty, stinky jiu-jitsu gym and get on sweaty mats with other sweaty people and risk injury, even if you do it only twice a week in the evenings. To refer to this as a hobby, it seems like it misses the mark. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the word hobbyist myself. I would consider myself a jiu-jitsu hobbyist who competes from time to time. I don't see what the problem is there. But there are some people who don't like this word. That's why whenever you hear this conversation, competitor versus hobbyist, the speaker's always kind of qualified and go, not that there's anything wrong with being a hobbyist, but let me give you my definition of a competitor and my definition of a hobbyist. You may find other definitions, and if you do, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. So to me, when I think competitor, I think of someone who's constantly on the competition scene. They compete often. We have the obvious examples of the professionals like the Gordon Ryans, the Rotolo brothers, B Team Jiu-Jitsu, but not just the big names. There are local people, young people who compete all the time, man. Like I heard this person a really young person in the early 20s, this girl was competing every weekend, which to me is crazy, because I know that my body couldn't take that. They trained for the purpose of competing. Let me say that again. The competitor is the one who their intent behind training is to compete. They're not thinking about self-defense. They're not thinking about longevity. No, they train jiu-jitsu for the purpose of competing and winning medals and potentially making a name for themselves. Most of the people who go to jiu-jitsu after work and they train 2 days a week, 3 days a week or whatever, myself included, these folks are not competitors. That is not the category they belong in my humble opinion. What is a hobbyist? A hobbyist is someone who They train jiu-jitsu, but not for the intent of competing. They have a bunch of other different reasons. They want to stay in shape. They enjoy it as an activity. For them, it's a social thing. Some people, jiu-jitsu is like, that's their social circle, man. They do it because it's great for stress management. They do it because it's great for their mental health. And they compete sometimes. They might go to jiu-jitsu 3 or 4 times, maybe even 5 times a week. There are some times during the year where I'm training jiu-jitsu 5 or 6 days a week, but it's for competing in a specific event that's coming up. Once that event has passed, that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna go back to my regular training. But I'm still a hobbyist. There is a third category that I realized. I would see these people, but I didn't know what to make of them. Having this false choice in my head, I'm like, where do you put these folks? Clearly they're not competitors, but they're hobbyists, but they're a different kind of hobbyists. They're almost like the opposite of the competitors. They train jiu-jitsu regularly, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 1 day a week, but they have absolutely zero intention of ever competing. It is the furthest thing from their mind, and no amount of talking will convince them to do otherwise. They're not looking to get good fast. They're not looking to dominate on the mats. It's an activity that they enjoy, and they do it for most of the same reason that the so-called hobbyist does it. So what do we call them? To me, these folks are recreationalists. They are recreational jiu-jitsu players. They're very similar to the person who joins their local soccer league, or they join the local softball league. They go for the camaraderie, for the socialization. They like that particular sport. That's the third category. And there are some people who, they sort of give in to the crowd, and then they sort of allow themselves to be talked into competing. Not these people. They're not even necessarily interested in getting good, not in the way that most of us think of it. They might just have this one area that they want to focus on, and then they just focus on that area for months and months and months. And if they get better at it, great. If not, they're not taking a test. They're not proving anything to anyone, and they have no intention of putting themselves through the crucible of training for a competition. So that's it. You have the competitor, very specific group. Most of you who are watching this video, you do not fall into that category. That includes me. I am not a competitor. I compete maybe twice a year, 3 times max. Most of you are hobbyists. There's nothing wrong with being a hobbyist. I tell you what, a jiu-jitsu 2-stripe blue belt hobbyist can pretty much kill probably 90% of the people they come across in the street. A jiu-jitsu hobbyist can really take care of themselves. The same is true for a recreationalist, but maybe at a lesser level. The difference with the hobbyist is that because they do compete from time to time, they are, in my opinion, better prepared for an altercation off the mats. Because when you compete, you get to feel the adrenaline and the tension and the stress of that fight or flight moment and responding to it appropriately. So if you're ever in a situation where you actually have to, use your jiu-jitsu skills, I think the hobbyist is more prepared than the recreationalist for sure. Given the criteria that I just laid down, let me know in the comments, what makes you a competitor or a hobbyist or a recreationalist? And if you're a hobbyist or a recreationalist, embrace it, man. I call myself a hobbyist. This time next year, I'll probably be a recreationalist, but a recreationalist who can take care of himself in the street. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts.